created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
I think that maybe if you have read the post that I did in our page in Ko-fi, you're already aware of my thoughts on the subject of the opera Don Carlo by Maestro Giuseppe Verdi, which, by the way, happens to have a version in French, Don Carlo, and the more well-known, that is presented on stage more often, the version in Italian, Don Carlo. And it is an opera that is part of his later his compositions of maturity by Maestro Verdi, and one can perceive it in the way he draws his characters. All of them have very interesting depth, and the story of Don Carlo or Don Carlo. We are going to be talking about the King's aria, the aria by Filippo II, Ela Giammai Mamò. In fact, we're going to be talking about the complete, not only the part of Ela Giammai Mamò, but going back to that part, even though that you have members of the royalty, you have Rodrigo, you have Don Carlo himself, the son of Filippo II, Elisabetta, the new queen, the princess of Eboli. Truth is that deep inside themselves they are sad. They have power, of course, prince, queen, king, princess, the duke. You have people who live or who have this power in the lands of the kingdom, but at the end, they are. It means they live with this solitude. They are so very alone, and one can listen in the orchestration by Maestro Verdi that this image, this perception of power, is only what the characters let you see in the outside, because in the inside they are sad. Rodrigo may not be certainly that case. At the end, you know that by the ending he's assassinated by instructions of the king and given the pressure of the church. So, and it is a long opera. That explains somehow why it is not that often on stage. The second situation that leads to this not so frequent title at the opera houses is that it also requests great singers. Don Carlo without a great mezzo will simply not make it. Don Carlo without a great bass for Filippo II will not make it. Of course, a good tenor for the king's son, of course, will not make it, and of course, a great lyrical soprano, mature in the sense of her artistry, a non-mature Elisabetta de Valois will not make it either. And on the complexity of the orchestration, the complexity of the emotions is there. Going back to the solitude, and Maestro Verdi gave this page of immense beauty and sadness to the king, the one who is the head of that immense kingdom, gives this part because he's already had this confrontation with his son. He's already seen him in the understanding that he is not being loved by Elisabetta. Of course, Elisabetta, who was taken from France, is just a marriage by arrangement. There is not love. It is not that they met and that they wanted to be together, as it is the case of Don Carlo and Elisabetta, who in one of the versions of the opera they add this part at the beginning where Elisabetta had first met Don Carlo. Of course, Elisabetta, and given the age of Don Carlo, she sees more of herself being married to the young Don Carlo, which she likes, and not the father, which of course the father is very, very old. We're about to learn it from the own words of Filippo II, because even though he's the king, even though he has all the power, he knows he can have everything except the love of the woman she wants. And it is a great reminder, and that's why in that post that I made reference to at the beginning of today's episode, and that's why Giuseppe Verdi was known for being able to portray, to convey, to understand the deep emotions of humans, and this emotion of feeling I have power, I have money, but I don't have love. And the melody that Maestro Verdi has given us as the opening of this scene is very interesting, because we are, remember that there are several versions, so I will try not to make reference to any act in particular, but in the act, because sometimes it is on the third and sometimes it's in the fourth, depending on the version that you're watching. Filippo, il re, the king, we have instructions: si alza la tela, il re, assorto in profonda meditazione, appoggiato ad un tavolo ingombro di carte, ove due doppieri finiscono di consumarsi, l'alba rischiara già e invitriate delle finestre. So when we have heard this melody, this opening melody, we have the king, we have him alone. It is dark. Maybe most of the night he has spent alone himself, alone with his thoughts. And the first thing he says when he sings, when he speaks in piano, pay attention to this, in piano, because these are thoughts for himself, come trasognato, as if he had just been awakened, as if he had been in his dreams. And he says, ella giammai m'amò. She never loved me. No, quel cor chiuso me, amor per me non ha, per me non ha. She never loved me. Her heart is closed for me. For me, she has not love. For me, she doesn't have love. And it is, except for the first, which is a semitone lower, everything is on the same line, which tells us that Maestro Verdi thinks this is more spoken than sung. There are not ligaturas either. So it is not ella giammai m'amò, no, quel cor chiuso a me. Of course, me not having a bass voice, you will lose most of the attractiveness of this aria, but I try to exemplify, and it must be with deep suffering. Ella giammai m'amò, no, quel cor chiuso me. And then the following phrase after ella giammai m'amò, no, quel cor chiuso me, then grows the volume for a second when he says amor per me non ha, and then diminishes again. Ella giammai m'amò, no, quel cor chiuso me, amor per me non ha, per me non ha. And the orchestration always very sad with that line of tan 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 Dun, 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 da, 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 da. He goes back to his memories and he says, io la rivedo ancor contemplar triste in volto il mio crin bianco il dì che qui di Francia venne. And so, as he digs in his memories, he says, it is still like I still see him. I can still see, her. I can still see her watching with a sad face how gray my hair is, making reference to he's old. And the first thing he sees in the face of Elisabetta is deception. The deception of seeing an old man that is going to be her husband. The day she came from France, the thing she saw first was how old I was. Io la rivedo ancor, contemplar triste in volto, il mio crin bianco il dì che qui di Francia venne. And I wanted to make a small pause here because maybe for some of you, it's been the case that the days when we were young, the days when we had the energy are long gone. And maybe if we are not fortunate enough to have someone by our side, maybe if we are alone, we can identify ourselves with Filippo when we say we are mature, we have a house or houses. We may not be rich, or maybe we are. We have some possessions, but we are alone. And when we try to meet someone we like, what we see in their eyes is the deception of seeing us being old, maybe with power, maybe with money, but what they see in us are old people. And that deception can never be erased from their faces. That's what Filippo is telling us. And so he says, after il dì che qui di Francia venne, remember always the sad orchestration. Tan 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 tan. Then he goes back to his phrase, no amor per me, no, no. And now in pianissimo, amor per me, no, no. It is very interesting that the line in which it is written, it is of course for a bass, but it is written for the middle and lower register of the voice of a bass, because it is usually thought that low notes convey better sadness, and that's why it is requiring the bass to make use of those beautiful resonances of his voice to demonstrate this sadness. So Filippo II has told us, no amor per me non ha, amor per me non ha. He's suffering. No, she doesn't have love for me. She doesn't have love for me. And if you're wondering what it is more difficult, if the low notes or the barely high notes, Maestro Verdi can request, if I remember well, the highest is requires it's a mi or an e for a bass, which is perfectly doable. But remember that the complexity of a given aria is not given only for the low or the high notes that are demanded by the composer. The difficulty resides many times on how that is required. If you come from a long series of high notes, of course that is tiring, such as in Vesti, La Giuba. That part that is difficult, it's because It is in the register after the il passaggio from the voice of a tenor, and it is continuous. Ridi pagliaccio, ta 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 ta. That continuous demand of volume and of power is what makes it difficult. But in the case of Filippo II, the difficulty is the other. That the voice of the bass is most of the time in the middle lower register than when he needs to go for his higher register in no, no, amor. This note that is very easy for a bass, in this case, is not that easy because you come from having the voice singing in much lower registers. So when suddenly, and Maestro Verdi demands the volume of the voice to increase, that is difficult for the bass to do. But given the composition of many middle to low notes and then high for his register and high volume. So those changes between piano and low and then forte and high is what makes this one difficult. Also because we are expecting the amor to be loud and clear from the voice. And also pay attention, even if the bass is requested to do that amor per me non, we have to feel that pathos, that sadness in his voice. He's not becoming heroic. Amor per me non. It is not that. It still has to be sad. Amor per me non. In the pianissimo and rallentando. Amor per me non. We have to believe in the sadness of what he's singing, and the only way to do it is if the bass gives this sadness to the voice. But after this reflection, Filippo, like waking up, dove son, quel dopier presso a finir, l'aurora imbianca il mio veron, già spunta il dì. Like recovering, what am I doing? What are those thoughts in my mind? The day is about to start. Then, with more energy, he says, passar vego I miei giorni lenti, il sono Dio sparì dai miei occhi languenti. I see my days passing in such slowness. For me, my days are slow. In this again, Filippo is telling us that despite being the king, his life is not happy. He's just seeing his days pass by. He's sad. His days are slow. Il sono a Dio spari dai miei occhi languenti. You know, just waiting for God to take away that light from my eyes that are already so tired. Languenti. Then starts what is for many the actual aria. The first part I have just shared with you is usually thought as the introduction, and the continuous part, the aria, is dormiro sol nel manto mio regale, which means I will sleep alone under my regal cape. Even though power is with me, power is by my side, I will still sleep alone. Many basses have taken it to their concerts or recitals, which of course is always absolutely fabulous. Dormirò sol nel manto il mio regal, quando la mia giornata è giunta sera. Dormirò sol here again comes what I was telling you. If you notice, we are coming from a slow-paced, low register, legato this time, and still with sadness. Dormiro sol nel manto il mio regal, ta la 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 la. And then he's going to be asked to say, dormirò sotto la volta nera, l'anellavelo dell'escurial. This part, which is beautiful in melody, carries immense sadness. Just try to portray a king alone, old, in darkness because the day has yet not started, who has spent all the night in his thoughts recalling his wife's deception as she saw how old he was. And he knows he's old, and he knows he wants God to take his soul. But it has not happened yet. So he says, dormido sol sotto la volta nera. I will still sleep alone here under the vault, the dark vault del Escurial, of course making reference to the castle where he lives. Se il certo regala mi desse il poter di leggere nel cor, if only this royal power gave me the possibility of being able to read the hearts, those hearts that only God can read. Ah, se il certo regala me desse il poter di leggere nel cor che Dio sol può veder. Because even to me, with all the power that I have, I am unable to read the hearts of people. And he says it not only in very low register, but also in pianissimo. So it is not out loud. Ah, se il certo regal. No, it has to be. Ah, se il certo regal. A me desse il poter. Then again, the combination that I was telling you before, you come from low volume and low notes. Ah, se il certo regala me desse il poter. And then Maestro Verdi is asking him to go a little higher in his register and go for forte. So we have pianissimo in the beginning, and now we have reached the forte. And if you have asked yourselves, if you have heard this aria before, why you may sometimes feel it is slow, maybe way too slow, maybe even boring, it would have to do with the singer being unable to bring all these dynamics to the singing, because moving from ah, se il certo regala me desse il poter di leggere nel cor che Dio sol può veder. You have at least 3 changes in the volume and the rhythm itself and the notes from lower to little higher and then going back to lower, which gives you a good idea of the storm of emotions, slow emotions, because he's the king. Also think that since he's the king, he cannot cry just like a baby. He's expected to be always in the pose because he's the king. So he cannot just weep and say, si sol Dio può veder. He's royal. Che Dio sol può veder. And then comes a phrase, parlato a mezza voce, tells the score, which means speaking in middle voice, and it is still piano. Se dorme il prince, veglia il traditore. Because with all the power he has, he knows that he has to be careful with the traitors. because no matter how lonely you feel, no matter how lonely you are, you will always be the king. And hiding in the shadows, there are those traitors. Se dorme il prince, veglia il traditore. Again, now going to pianissimo. Il certo perde il re, il consorte l'onore. Not only he's going to lose the power, not only is going to lose the kingdom under the powers of the traitors, of these traitors, but also his wife would lose the honor. Being a king, what he's telling us, is not only about having power, about having money, about being able to control money, and being unable to control the thoughts of people. It is also about understanding your loneliness and the level of responsibility that you have. After having said that, he goes back to Dormir, o sol, nel manto il mio regal, quando la mia giornata è giunta sera. Dormir, o sol, sotto la volta nera. Dormir sotto. Again, we are going for this momentaneous higher volume and higher note. Sotto la volta nera, l'anellavelo dell'escuria. He insists, se il certo regala mi desse il poter di leggere nel cuor, now fortissimo, again, now double F, di leggere nel cor. More dramatic now, but remember that even though Filippo is being asked to go high for some moments in this monologue that he's having, he still has this sadness in his voice, and he's reminding us of this immense sadness, because after this more powerful there is a pause, lungo silenzio. Maestro Verdi has requested the orchestra and the singer to walk quiet after nel cor. And now he's going back to those sad words. How could you say those sad words if you know you are old, that you have money, but you don't have by your side somebody who loves you? The person who is by your side does not love you. Ella giammai m'amò. No, quel cor chiuso me, amor per me non ha, amor per me non ha. So the aria has opened telling us, Ella giammai m'amò. No, she never loved me. It has evolved and has told us about the risks that a king has to suffer, the risk of treason, that immense solitude of having nobody by your side. Dormir, o sol, sol manto il mio regal. But at the end, everything goes back to ella giammai m'amò, no quel cor chioso me. Her heart is closed for me, because her heart does not have love, doesn't really have any love for me. And this is how this aria wraps up. Of course, I have not mentioned that it has been sung by, of course, all the. This is the aria that every bass wants to sing. With the challenges I shared with you, it is sung most of the time in the middle lower register of the bass voice, and it has these sudden bursts of emotion with not so difficult notes, but remember that as we're coming from something very calm and very low to go to tone, all of a sudden can be difficult for a bass voice. And also the bass voice has to do it in control, because it is not another part in the opera where the king has to show his power. No, this is solitude. This is a monologue. There is immense sadness, and this sadness has to be present all the time in the aria. Great singers of this aria, great singers, there are not many. Singers, bass singers of this, there are several. Great voices, there are a few. This sends us back that most of the greatest bass voices come from Slavic voices. Of course, we have Boris Christoph, we have Gyaurov, of course, the great bass. Nikolai Gyaurov is also very well known for portraying this role. And we have more recent basses that have played this one. And it is true that even if it is not the most important character in the opera, it is true that it is the only moment where Giuseppe Verdi allows us to see what the king is going through, because we see him treating very badly his own son, treating very, very badly Don Carlo, being part of also mistreating Elisabetta, and asking for advice to Rodrigo. We see several facets of Filippo, but this is the only facet where we are allowed, like entering the intimity of the king, to see, to witness his sadness, to witness his solitude. And this is the only moment of sadness and solitude that he will share with us, because later is when he will ask his son to be captured and eventually maybe even killed, as well as having Rodrigo being killed, as he has agreed with Il Grande Inquisitore. And also he is going to have a very dramatic, tremendous scene with his wife Elisabetta de Valois, even though in the very deep of his heart he loves her. He knows love is not reciprocal, but he has to remain the king. These moments of sadness, of solitude that we all have had, and that many times tend to intensify as we see ourselves in the mirror, and we understand that despite our successes, we may still find ourselves in solitude. Written by one of the greatest composers of all times, the very great Maestro Giuseppe Verdi.
You can follow our channel for the latest updates and more content. Opera We Love Singing, in just one word. Link in the description of the episode.